I think this paper, before we go to step by step on 36 stratagems, the purpose is I'm not going to cover every single one because I don't see that's our purpose of our meetup. I think we are more on the philosophical side. And the reason I choose this one is the author, Davia, the writing at the first few paragraphs a little bit shocked me and bring me to think, okay, why she has this kind of comment. And then I like spend some time to discuss her comment. And then before we move on to the 36 strategies, I'm going to read from her paper. Okay, that's she said. I highlighted the word with red. Okay, 36 stratagems permeates the culture. Children are taught them early, and they are referred to as nursery rhyme and the soap opera, songs, and the storytelling. I'm not sure nursery rhyme, but very sure about the soap opera, storytelling, and some have said that they are part of Chinese collective unconsciousness, but that is indeed quite troubling given their contents. Okay, so that's the author's comment. I do agree it's a collective unconsciousness, and I'm surprised the author, okay, Davia, give the comment about troubling, okay, the contents, and that's true. We don't learn from the textbook. Usually we learn, okay, we learn from soap opera. If you watch Chinese soap opera, Chinese newspaper, story, ancient, even today, there's a lot of this name or example will show up. Before I go to Pin, let me finish the reading. And adjunct to Sun Tzu's The Art of War, the 36 stratagems are all about misdirection, deceit, dominance. Literally, they are 180 degrees opposite to the trustworthy behavior I have always preached. In fact, upon first reading them, they made my skin crawl, okay? But then I realized that this comparing ancient leadership advice is exactly the kind of information we need to be aware of, think about, and plan for, whether we embrace it or not, because our adversaries surely are doing so. So I do agree on the last part, but I'm surprised. I'm not saying I disagree. Okay, talk about make her skin crawl. I think that's a very interesting comment. Okay, so I'm not saying I disagree or I agree, but I think that's the part that is worthy to discuss. Okay, let me finish this part. Their goals are to confuse the enemy in order to vanquish them. Not a win-win strategy is to be found among them. Rather, these are strategies to the winner to take all at any cost. Some of the strategies are familiar from their application in sports and the modern military strategy, while others are relatively unknown in the West. But in the East, they are applied to business and politics as well as to war. Okay. So that's her comment, okay, about this one. I know Pin want to say something. Okay, okay, Pin, please.
Yeah, thank you so much for opening with us. I'm glad we have a chance to discuss these nuances. I think it's a great example of how difficult it is to do intercultural understanding, because there's always some truth, but there's sometimes knowing a little bit is almost worse than knowing nothing. So a few thoughts to share. Yeah, the phrases that caught your attention also caught my attention. One is, number one, is not taught to children, 36 stratagems. Okay, what's taught to children is like Sanzi and this stuff that's totally different. It is true that it permeates in our culture in the sense that in one of my presentations before, I talked about in the Chinese language, there are these 4-character idioms that are basically used as words. They're set, and every single, pretty much except for the very last few, every single one of these 36 stratagems is a 4-character idiom. So basically, it's used in our language, everyday language. It's infused into that, and that is true. But another thing to say is that it's normally used in a humorous way. This is not something to be studied seriously. Normally, we use these like someone try to pull wool over your eyes, or someone try to deceive you, and let's say a friend, and then you caught what he's doing, and you say, oh, you thought you could pull this stratagem on me, didn't you? But I caught you. It's most of the time it's used as humor, these stratagems, and I really it's rather rare. It's looked at in some kind of a very serious way, like, oh, this is, I have this something I need to accomplish, and then how do I, it's more used like adjectives and words in language to describe something. And maybe you pulled out something that you're quite proud of afterwards. When you describe it to someone, you would use one of these terms from the stratagems. That's so anyway, worry not. I don't think anyone's skin needs to crawl. It's
yeah. Okay. Thank you, Pim. I share. I have the same way of your thinking, but I kind of more interested in why people in the two sides think about things differently, and then that also reveal they probably have much more misunderstanding, okay, between Chinese culture and the Western culture. And another more serious problem is probably have much more misunderstanding between any two culture. For example, Western and Islamic, okay, or any other two culture. So that's the key. I think we need to study, and probably that's the purpose, the ultimate goal in our group. Douglas, thank you for patience.
Okay, yeah, this is Douglas. I'm Dr. Douglas Pilfer. I taught philosophy over 30 years in the college. Okay, and I'm more into the Greek philosophy, okay, because I'm more classical Greek. I've written a lot of books and stuff on that. But here's the thing: we have to look at it from the context of the time, okay, and what time it was, and what was going on at the period of time, if we're looking at what you're talking about. So you have to look at it from time, context of what was going on at the time, and understand that a lot of what was brought up, it was brought up because situations that were going on in the area.
Yeah, thank you, Douglas. Anybody have any comment on this one? Joe, please.
I'd just like to point out, in terms of Western culture, we have these things called the 10 Commandments, which apply to, I believe, the majority of the people in this country. And that doesn't mean we follow them. People are aware of them. They're in the conscious, they're in our unconscious minds, but we pay no attention to those basically on a daily basis. I mean, things like that, shout not kill, I understand, but we lie, we covet, so these are just, I would see the 36 stratagems as being somewhat similar to the 10 Commandments. Many people know them, but they're not actually followed, and there's nothing there to make your skin crawl.
All right, thank you, Joe. But I think I agree with you. Okay, so but even we don't follow the 10 Commandments, but we have to we cannot deny the 10 Commandments have some impact to the people who grow up in this culture. Same as like Pin said, the 36 stratagem, we look at it as a joke, as a kitty or something. But since you hear day and day, not day and day, if you watch soap opera, you probably see a lot. and you read the newspaper, Chinese newspaper, they probably use this one as a title to describe what George Bush did, describe what the president did, this what's going on. This one. So that probably have more unknown influence on that. So that's probably more important to realize. And second thing is, how does other culture, when they read with 5 sentence, 1 paragraph description, what's their, what do they learn? You know, just like Douglas said, it's the context of, or really get the essence on that. That's a different story. I think we have Thai. I think we have a lot to cover, and then the detail of the strategy that's safe for the later part. Okay, so we have the Thai, please.
Yeah, so I guess in my former life, I was an attorney as well as a professor of humanities and rhetoric. So I guess 2 things. If you look at my picture, you know I play poker. And so in my ordinary life, I certainly try to practice, you know, morality, and whether we want to talk about Kant or Bentham is up for debate. But the reason I enjoy poker so much is actually I can employ these exact strategies at the poker table. Like, I've been everything from a fast food worker to a vet to, I mean, I say all sorts of things at the poker table, and I do all sorts of things at the poker table that I wouldn't ordinarily do in my entire life. So I look forward to learning about these strategies, and I can tell you that every poker player employs every single one of these strategies, and they do so gracefully. So that's all I wanted to say.
Yeah, thank you, Tai. Yeah, same thing as like, you know, you don't follow the Bible teaching, you know, when you play chess, right? Be honest, love your neighbor, love your adversary, okay, forgiving everybody. So, you know, so I think everything has its own domain. And that's just like Tai said, you know, you play poker, but you don't teach your kids, you know, use the same way in the school. You know. I think we're Alex, Pin, and James. Alex, please.
Yes, I want to actually refer to Dr. Pilzer, his comment before that the context of time was important, because at that time, Confucius was, of course, a huge deal, right? So you have one side, Confucius being, you know, following your listen to your rulers and everything, and very moral, respectful. And then you have the other hand, you have these 36 you know, strategy for psychological affairs. So I just want to say that these 36 strategies have nothing to do with like being nice to people or anything. These are technical strategies. It's not really about it's about winning a war, because during that time, you know, there's no one there to protect you. Right, you either win or you lose, and then if you lose, you get killed. So these psychological, you know, stratagems is justified because it's all about survival at that time, you know, and it's actually so important that people during that time, the general, the soldiers, even the emperor himself or the king, they all have to study these things because these are guidelines. Like what Ta said, you know, he used a lot of these in his game of poker, but you know, during the time back then, it was life and death. And these are guidelines. Like, you know, when I read this, I feel like, oh yeah, I've done this before in my life. You know, I've actually employed some of the strategies, right, at work or with other people, right? So this is actually almost like sum up, you know, the guidelines as to in these situations, what you can do to win. And so it's very different from Confucius, but at the same time, also very important during that time. So when you said that when she read it, it makes her skin crawl, that's because I think she really doesn't understand that this is not really about harming other people or like doing bad things. This is about survival.
Thank you, Alex. Yeah, I think that also remind us one thing is when we read other cultures' teaching, right? Are we in the same way, right? We read other cultures' teaching. When we read it, and with one paragraph explanation, we will say, "Oh, how come they are doing this?" Right? So it's probably they have something we don't know. I think that's the purpose I want to bring out this one. Yeah. Pin, please.
Quick comment about history. Yeah, a lot of these stratagems are represent. There's a background historical story behind it, like put the state away on besiege the state away to save the state of Zhao. So I think that's part of the popularity too, is that each one encapsulates a little historical story. Another thing, actually, Jason, I thought you had a great point about mutual understanding. I apologize. I sounded kind of cavalier, dismissive about people who felt they're disturbed or fearful upon reading these stratagems. Actually, if anyone among us kind of had that kind of reaction, I would like to hear from them to. I think this should be a safe space. So we're trying to understand each other, not judge each other. So I think people who had that kind of reaction should feel fully justified, and please feel free to speak up to talk about your reaction and what was the thoughts that you might want to share. So I think it's very understandable.
Yeah,
we would love to, mutually understand that. Anyway, that's all. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's very important, and that's exactly the purpose we are doing this. Because the first reaction I'd like to know firsthand, the outsider read this one, how does you react? Second is kind of reflect to myself, right? When I read other culture, do I make the same mistake, so-called mistake or misunderstanding on other culture? I think that's more important than which side is right. That is okay. James, please.
I just wanted to say to thank Ty for his comments. I think they opened up a very rich discussion, and I think this reminds me of Heidegger's dictum that Dasein is in the truth, and Dasein is equally in the untruth, regardless of someone's propinquities to always tell the truth or to deceive. It's a fact that human relations are equally involved in the truth and the untruth, and all these. Someone also talked about war as being a life and death matter, and what it is the most extreme game. All these things are games: game of war, game of diplomacy, the game of poker and chess and so forth. All of them are involved. Have all games have elements of power and deception.
Thank you, James. Okay, so let's move on. Okay, so I think we already. Okay, I think the important is how to read this one, right? I think that there's the same way. I think it's 36 strategy is not alone. Okay, okay, Art of War, we read it. The most famous probably is Machiavelli's, right? The Prince, right? If you read as a moral teacher, then you will say like his chapter, which chapter? Let's say so-called the most hated chapter. Okay, 24 or something. Okay, that's the most hated. Talk about the prince should not be honest, something blah blah blah. Okay, and then I also find out Machiavelli also have a book called Art of War. Okay, it's a Socratic dialogue talking about the military science. I didn't read the book, but it's interesting. Okay, he also talked about Art of War, and in the Prince, right? And there's a chapter called Art of War, and it's very similar to what very similar to the first 5 chapters of Sun Tzu's Art of War, talk about how important the war, and you have to learn the war. It's the life and death, and you have to prepare for in the peacetime. The best way is not use it, but in case you have to use it, you have to basically the same strategy. Okay, that Machiavelli is writing. Okay, so I think when we read the 36 strategy, we kind of have to think about, we probably read the same way as you read Machiavelli. Or you will say Machiavelli is totally nonsense. We should not read it. Then you probably don't have to learn Art of War or don't have to read 36 Strategy, because I think that's the same thing. And another thing, I not that famous, but it's probably it's a lot. I know they have a meetup group talking about this. Miyamoto Musashi's The Book of Fine Rings. That's in the Japanese culture, and he during the so-called the Sengoku period. Okay, he's the samurai, the most famous samurai, Miyamoto Musashi. Okay, his most famous samurai, and as a samurai, your job is a duel. And he died at age of 62 when he was sick. So that means during his duel, he always won, right? So that's why he can die at the 62 years old when he was in the deathbed. So, and he wrote a book called The Book of Five Rings, and then the 5 chapters. That basically is five rings: earth, water, fire, wind, and the void. Okay, you can see got a heavy influence by the Buddhism thinking. And basically he's talking about how to duel. But a lot of today's in the business school or something, they read this one the same way as read the Sun Tzu's Art of War or 36 Stratagems, use this one for the business strategy. Okay, so I think that's another book that people read in the same way. And if you look at all this one, Sun Tzu, okay, Miyamoto Musashi, and Machiavelli, they all grow up in pure basics, the same kind of situation in the warring state situation. Sun Tzu is in the warring state, or spring and autumn before the warring state. Machiavelli is to the during the time Italian Renaissance, and they have at least 5 principalities, right? Many principalities. He is advised to the Medici family. Okay, so basically the same thing. Okay, and same as Miyamoto Musashi. Okay, he is grew up in the Japanese so-called Sengoku period, which means warring state in Japan. Okay, so also so they kind of grow up this kind of strategy, and this kind of strategy being used not only for the duel during the war, and also used for the business, and then in today's even used for the people's relationship. I'm not saying improve the people's, but So let's have some comment, and we have Pin and Douglas. Pin, please.
A quick one to follow up on Alex's point about survival. I want to echo that, and that's why the most popular and most often quoted one is probably the last one, which says, "Walking away is the best strategy." So we're talking about a survival situation where first ask yourself if you can just run away. If you can't, run first.
Thank you. Douglas, please.
Going from so
I'm sorry.
Mr. Rich,
we cannot
can
hear
you hear me?
Your
Let me
connection.
get it. Can you hear me better now? Better?
Again? Yeah.
Okay. So I would say I was an Iron Champion poker player. I was on the TV, okay? And what he had to say about poker is right. You have to use all these strategies to win a game of poker, okay? And how many times we did that. But the big thing that you would want to hear is the basic, remember all the wars. We're going to talk about the different wars that went on. There were quite a few wars going on at the time, okay? And everybody was fighting everybody, if you remember correctly. So there was no peace. It was all fighting. So when he wrote the book, he wrote it because of the wars that were going on.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, that's what I would let you know.
All right, thank you. Yeah,
and that's what I wanted to say.
Yeah, thank you.
We'll
Thank you.
talk about that.
Yeah. Douglas, I have to mute you because you have a lot of background noise. Okay. Okay, anything about this one? Okay, then let's move on. Okay, I just copy from the I think so from Wikipedia. I think the description is quite, at least I agree. So, you know, so that's right. So I see Ben, you have the hands up.
Yeah, one thing that I just wanted to add that I found to be interesting about the article is it said that each of the stratagems is a winners take all position. But then I was thinking about it, there's no such thing as winner takes all, especially in terms of war. Like everyone loses something, even if you are victorious, right? And then it's interesting that it's published in a Forbes article and not like a historical website or something like that, or a museum database. And because at the end of the day, like if we're real about it, business is not analogous to war. You lose your life in war. And in business, you just lose resources. And so the same principles may apply in some ways, but we all know that businesses, at the end of the day, when we're looking at them long-term, flourish on trust and providing value. But anyways.
Yeah, thank you, Ben. Pin, please.
Yeah, thanks. I thought that was an excellent point by Ben. Yeah, I would say the winner take all is the author of the essay's own interpretation. It's not how it's normally perceived in the Chinese mind. And frankly, winner take all is not much of a concept in Chinese culture. Because there's, the yin and yang and things like that is so embedded in our consciousness. There's always different opposing forces that are always present and need to be harmonized. So I'm just agreeing with Ben. That's all. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah, I think I think if you strictly look at the 36 strategy in the foreigner's eye, okay, I think all of them are winner take all, except the last one. Okay. We have Kevin and SK. Kevin, please.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Okay. Let's talk about this paper. Okay, before we go to the detail on the 36 strategy. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, Kevin, please. Yeah.
Yeah.
How about you?
You switch my topic. Yeah. For me, let's general talk. I would say it's our thinking method is so different. Let's see. For Western perspective, we normally like binary perspective. It's either right, yes or no. That's easy. It sounds easy. Actually, it's not like that. When you see the yes, opposite could be the true, could be the exception. It could be false, feelable, and for each side, like just now Pin said, it's not. It's a winner take all. It's no, they in the context, you cannot find this. This best strategy is 36, right? Don't fight, go. If you can move away, the situation, move away from the conflict, that's the best. Even let's see, those let's see 36 strategy, you still can use it in certain situation. Let's see, it's not, for me, before a conflict, if you have what's the intention? The intention to protect yourself or cause harm to others. If it's cause to harm others, absolutely that's bad. That's what people like seagull skin curl. I can make sense. If let's say protect yourself, this makes sense, right? That's when you got a situation. Let's see, in certain situation, you definitely use those strategies. For example, And the one maybe make her is uncomfortable. It's let's see, you going to use others to kill your enemy. That's powerful, I would say. It's maybe the word is a hustle, but it's help. Decision. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Kevin. SK, please.
Yeah, just very quickly, I think war is in every aspect of life. It literally starts from us within. We have conflicts within. You can apply this for ourselves. We can apply between relationship, husband, wife, brother, sister, friends. You can go to the business and then you go to the war, right? So I think it applies everywhere, in my opinion. That's it.
Thank you, SK. Yeah. Pin and the Madeline. Pin, please.
Yeah, I just want to elaborate a little bit more on this winner take all thing in Chinese culture. In Chinese culture, if you tell someone that, oh, you're the winner and you took it all, it will make that person really scared. It's almost like a curse. Because in Chinese culture, we're taught, very ingrained with avoiding extremes. And when you take all, it's very extreme. And also from I Ching and all kinds of ancient philosophy books, it's always when you have all, that's the greatest danger, and you're pretty much done. You're going to be, that's like you're on the edge of being destroyed somehow. So winner take all, somehow I think it's an important maybe distinction between cultures. It may sound very good to some people, to people in the West, but I would say in the Chinese culture, winner take all is seen as a very bad thing that you really need to avoid.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. But that's okay. Let's go to Madeline, please. Madeline.
Okay, there we go. Let's see, two things. One was I had decided to complain to the a legal department in my city about a problem with my apartment because I wasn't getting anywhere with my attempts, and I felt guilty because I was sicking the law on them, and at the same time I thought, you know what, city's much more powerful than I am. There are these laws for a reason. And then I thought, oh, this is kill with a borrowed knife, and which is to get someone else to do the work for me because it wasn't working. It's lead paint remediation, and it felt very vile to think to myself, oh, this is kill with a borrowed knife. But now that I know it's used more humorously, it actually makes more sense. So thank you for that. Also, as long as we're on the slide, the one we're on right now, I did look up the woman who wrote the article. Her background is really in working for big multinational corporations doing marketing. Mm-hmm. And she also does basically media and reputation management and crisis management.
Okay.
So that's, she's got Ivy League degrees and everything, but this is her thing is the corporate world, crisis management, and managing the reputations of corporations.
Yeah, thank you. And I think the different person read it will have a different reaction. That's for sure, but that's why we are discussing this. While this discussion, I kind of realize, how I try to summarize how the two sides will look at the 36 stratagems a little bit different. I think it depends on how we learn it, okay? First, the 36 stratagems is not like a textbook, right? You have, some people may imagine, today you probably can buy in Chinese or in English, so-called 36 stratagems, and you have the 36 chapter. Each chapter have the expression, strategy, reasoning, and application, this kind of book. But that's not, at least not for me and the friend I know, the way that we learn, right? The way we learn is, no, school is not teaching this. School teaching the Confucius talk, Mencius, not teaching about this. But when you read, for example, the Romans of Three Kingdoms, okay, the famous strategist Zhuge Liang, okay, he will use that strategy, and we will know, oh, this one named this one named this. We watch soap opera, okay, especially the ancient soap opera. We will see the story. We know that's this, that's this. And since the name, just like Pin said, that's 4 words idiom, it kind of sounds like exactly, you know, you don't need a reason. It just sounds right, okay? And they stick in your brain. And today you open the newspaper, they talk about Joe Biden. They use the word to describe how Joe Biden do this, okay? So you just review this one again and again. So after a while, you learn this 36 strategy. You probably cannot name all at once, but at least you are very familiar with at least 30s. And each one is not a textbook teaching. Each one is a story and many story. So doesn't matter how evil of this story, okay, or how good of this one, or winner take or whatever, it's not just a story or text. It's a rich of story. So for example, like Madeline said, borrow knife to kill someone, okay. So I probably quickly can bring up a few stories. And usually the person who borrowed the story is the bad guy, okay. So it's nothing affect the moral. Sometimes talk about for like something like let's say replace bin with rotten timber. Okay, so this one we will have another story. Okay, and the person do it is to save his own country. Okay, so many stories. So it's kind of like a balance. Okay, so each strategy to the person in the culture, we know it has its own boundary. Okay, and we have many stories. Unlike the person from outside, he will read 36 pages or 36 sentences or 36 books. That's a very different situation, because when you read it, you don't have the boundary. You just read it and apply, just like the author. Okay, she is in the cutting throat, okay, business competition, okay, doing the corporate competition. So she will think about it in a different way. So I think that's the key difference between the two cultures, how we learn this and how the other learn it. And the lesson I learned for myself is be careful when I pick up a Bhagavad Gita to read. I'm reading outside, okay? And what Shran or SK read it, okay? They are reading from inside. They get a totally different view. Okay, so I think that's the lesson probably is more important than who is right. You know, Alex, please.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment, because actually, even though I know Mandarin, but I've never read this 36 stratagem in my life until now. So
let me interrupt you, but you know some, right? Before you read this.
Yes. So just like Pin said, it's part about growing up. Like, but the context of time, again, is very important, because back then they were really employing this to save themselves in the in war. But of course, you know, the wartime is not as much as before, but people deploy these strategies in real life as well. So the interesting thing for me is, while you have Confucius on one hand, but secretly, I think, you know, everybody knows that, you know, knowing Confucius is not going to save you. It's not going to be able to explain what to do in all situations. Just because you respect your parents doesn't mean that you know, you're not going to get yourself in trouble, or even if you, a lot of times, you know, in ancient stories, you follow your rulers, but there's always someone else trying to sabotage you and all that. So, you know, how are you going to deploy these strategies in real life? You know, so all these strategies applies to war, to life, and you know, in many situations. And I actually find them, you know, as I grow up, you know, of course, just like what Pin said, it's everyday life. You can make fun of joke about a situation like, oh yeah, you're trying to kill with a bar or knife, and or as high as the political situations that you see right now. But I just wanted to make this point that Confucius is not enough to explain about life. And people back then, they understand that. So they can, one hand, read Confucius, and then the next minute, they're going to read 36 Stratagems, because they know that this is actually much more practical in real life situations. So, yeah, but actually, I have a question for Jason. Jason, is this supposed to be a book, or is this coming from the Art of War, or is this just like it's written by Sun Tzu, right?
No, okay. So that's exactly this slide I'm going to talk about. Okay, I think
Okay.
Pin probably